The first thing I registered was the smell, not the metallic tang of blood that had filled my lungs as I choked on my own final breath, not the sterile, antiseptic bite of the hospital room where I had died alone and forgotten. No, this scent was warm and familiar, cloying and sweet, the lavender and vanilla candle I used to burn in our bedroom because Mark said it made him feel at home. The candle I had bought as a desperate, pathetic attempt to make him want to stay. My eyes snapped open. The ceiling was pristine white. Not the water-stained, cracked tile of the county morgue where my body had been dumped because no one had claimed it. The sheets were the soft, thousand-thread count Egyptian cotton I had saved for months to surprise him. The sunlight streaming through the gauze curtains was golden and soft, not the harsh, flickering fluorescent light of a life support monitor. I sat up so fast the room spun on my nightstand. My phone glowed with the date, May 14th. 4 years ago. 4 years before the divorce papers. 4 years before the cancer diagnosis that was somehow miraculously never cancer at all. 4 years before Chloe smiled her sweet, plastic smile as she slid the knife between my ribs, both literally and figuratively. I scrambled out of bed, my bare feet hitting the cold hardwood floor, and stumbled to the full-length mirror in the corner of the room. The same ornate, gilded mirror Mark had insisted on buying. To make the room feel bigger, babe, he had said. But I now knew he just liked watching his own reflection as he manipulated me. The girl who stared back was a stranger. She was younger, softer. Her blonde hair was thick and glossy, not the thin, brittle straw it had become after the first round of chemotherapy I never actually needed. Her cheekbones were full, not hollowed out by the stress and the slow, insidious poison I now realized had been administered in my evening tea. The tea Chloe always made sure to bring me when she came to check on her best friend. Her hazel eyes were wide and clear, not dulled by the exhaustion of fighting a losing battle I was never meant to win. But it was the eyes that truly unsettled me. They were the same color, the same shape, but something inside them had changed. There was a fire there, a cold, incandescent rage that the old me, the good, obedient, desperate to be loved me, had never possessed. This girl in the mirror had seen hell. She had walked through the fire, and she had come back with ashes on her soul and a blade in her hand. The memories came crashing down like a tidal wave, dragging me under their relentless current. I remembered everything. I remembered the day I found the life insurance policy. A policy Mark had taken out on me without my knowledge, worth $3 million. A policy I had only discovered in a drawer of his study, hidden beneath a stack of golf magazines. When I was looking for a stapler, I remembered the look on his face when I confronted him. That smooth, practiced mask of concern. It's just a precaution, sweetheart. With your health being so delicate, I wanted to make sure you were taken care of if anything happened. His eyes had flickered, just for a second, with something cold and calculating. I had been too blind, too trusting to see it. I remembered Chloe's face as she sat beside my hospital bed, holding my hand, her eyes filled with crocodile tears. Don't worry, Al. I'll take care of everything. I'll make sure your clients are happy. I'll hold down the fort at the studio. You just focus on getting better. She had squeezed my hand so hard it hurt, and I had thought it was love. It was greed. I remembered the night everything fell apart. The night Mark had called me, his voice fractured and broken, to tell me he had to go away for a few days. A crisis at work. But the real crisis was at his apartment, the one I hadn't known existed. The one he had been sharing with Chloe for 6 months. They had been building their new empire on the ruins of mine, funneling my clients, my money, my reputation into their own company. I remembered the moment of clarity, the moment the fog finally lifted, when I had hired a private investigator out of a growing, gnawing suspicion. It was too late by then. The report was damning. Photos, bank statements, a timeline of their affair that stretched back years. They hadn't just betrayed me. They had orchestrated my destruction. I remembered the confrontation. The three of us in my living room. The same living room I had decorated with such hope. Mark had stood there, his handsome face twisted into a snarl, no longer bothering to hide his contempt. Chloe had stood beside him, her arm linked through his, her smile smug and triumphant. It's over, Eleanor, Mark had said, his voice flat and cold. You're nothing. You were never anything. You were just a means to an end. A rich girl with a daddy who didn't love her and a trust fund I could tap into. Chloe had laughed, a brittle, cruel sound. You really thought I was your friend, please? You were so easy to manipulate, Elle. So desperate for approval. It was like taking candy from a baby. All I had to do was smile and pretend to care, and you gave me everything. I remembered my mother's voice on the phone, cold and dismissive, when I had called her, sobbing, begging for help. Eleanor, stop being so dramatic. Mark is a good man. You've always been difficult. If he's found someone else, it's because you couldn't keep him happy. What did you expect? I remembered my father's silence, the distant, unreturned calls, the letter I had sent, pouring out my heart, that came back unopened with return to sender, stamped across the front in angry red ink. And then I remembered the end. The final horrifying act. I had been diagnosed with a rare aggressive form of cancer. Chloe had found the specialist. She had insisted on managing my treatment, my appointments, my medication. I had been too weak, too tired, too broken to fight. I had trusted her. I had trusted all of them. But it wasn't cancer that was killing me, it was the slow, steady drip of arsenic, meticulously administered in the tea Chloe brought me every evening. It's a special blend, Elle, with herbs that are supposed to help with the nausea. And it's so soothing, isn't it? I remembered the taste now. Metallic and sweet. The way my hair had started falling out. The way my skin had turned a sickly yellow. The way the doctors had been baffled by my symptoms, unable to explain why the cancer wasn't responding to treatment. And I remembered my last night. The night I had finally, mercifully, been allowed to go home to die. I had been propped up in bed so weak I could barely lift my head. Mark and Chloe had stood beside me, their faces masks of concern. But as the room had grown dark, as the edges of my vision had begun to blur, I had seen them look at each other. And Mark had smiled. It was a small, tight smile, the smile of a man who had just won a long and exhausting war. He had leaned down and kissed my forehead, his lips cold and dry. "It's okay, Eleanor," he had whispered, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "You can let go now. We'll take it from here. Chloe and we'll make sure your legacy lives on." Chloe had laughed. An actual, full-throated laugh. "Don't worry, Elle. I'll take such good care of your clients. They're my clients now, actually. And the money from your policy will be put to such good use." I had tried to scream. I had tried to claw at them, to fight, to do something. But my body had been a puppet with severed strings. I had simply lain there, my eyes wide, my mouth open, as the life slowly drained out of me. And then, nothing. No white light. No avin. No angels. Just a void, an endless, suffocating darkness, until the smell of that lavender and vanilla candle had pulled me back from the abyss. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, and watched the tears roll down my cheeks. I was crying. But they weren't tears of grief or sorrow. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. The girl in the mirror looked back at me, and she nodded. "Not this time." I whispered to her. "Never again." I moved through my morning routine like a ghost, a specter haunting the ruins of my own life. Every detail was a knife twisting in my gut. There was the breakfast nook where Mark would sit every morning, scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging my existence. There was the coffee machine I had bought him for his birthday, the one he had forgotten to take with him when he moved out. There was the wedding photo on the mantel, the one where we were both smiling, and I could now see the lie in his eyes. The doorbell rang. I knew who it was before I opened the door. I had lived this day before. I had lived this moment 4 years ago, and I knew exactly what was coming. I opened the door. Mark stood there, his handsome face arranged in a mask of practiced concern. He wore the same blue sweater I had always loved, the one that brought out the color of his eyes. He was holding a bouquet of white roses, my favorites. Or at least they had been. "Eleanor, honey," he said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "I've been so worried about you. Chloe called. She said you haven't been answering your phone. She said you were talking about some new client. Something about a hotel chain. You seemed stressed." I stared at him, my heart hammering in my chest. The sheer audacity of him. The absolute breathtaking arrogance. He stood in my doorway, the man who had planned my death, and he was pretending to be concerned about my stress levels. "I'm fine, Mark," I said, my voice flat and dead. "I just needed some rest." He stepped forward, reaching out to touch my arm. I flinched away from his touch, so violently that I almost stumbled backward. He looked hurt, the consummate actor. Whoa, babe. Just me. What's going on? You're shaking. I was shaking. My entire body was trembling with the effort of not screaming. The rage was a living thing inside me, clawing at my chest, demanding to be let out. Just a headache, I managed. I didn't sleep well. He frowned. You need to take better care of yourself. Chloe and I were talking and we think you've been working too hard. You need to delegate. Let her take on some of your bigger projects. It's not healthy for you to be so stressed. Chloe and I, the words were like venom in my ears. They were already a unit, a team, and I was just the obstacle they needed to remove. I'll think about it, I said, the words tasting like ash. He smiled, that bright, winning smile that had once made my heart flutter. Now it made my blood run cold. Good girl. Now look, I've got to run. But I'll be back later. We should have dinner. Just the two of us. We need to reconnect, okay? I nodded mutely. He leaned in for a kiss, and I turned my head at the last moment, so his lips brushed my cheek instead of my mouth. He didn't seem to notice. He was already walking away, his phone out, his attention already elsewhere. I closed the door and leaned against it, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The phone in my hand buzzed. A text from Chloe to Chloe. *Hey Bestie. Just checking in. I heard you had a rough night. You know I'm always here for you, right? We should grab coffee later. I have some exciting news about the studio. Sparkling heart. The studio. My studio. My life's work. The business I had built from nothing. Pouring my heart and soul into every single design. She was going to take it. She was already planning to take it. I typed back a reply, my fingers shaking. Me. I'm actually feeling a little better. Coffee sounds great. How about that little place on 5th, the one with the outdoor seating? Chloe. Perfect. I'll see you at 2. Can't wait to tell you everything. Kiss mark. I looked at the screen and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator. That the old Eleanor would have been grateful. The old Eleanor would have been desperate for any crumb of friendship, any hint of approval. She would have walked into that coffee shop with her heart on her sleeve, ready to be manipulated and used. But the new Eleanor knew what was coming. She knew that Chloe would sit across from her, batting her eyelashes, and suggest a restructure of the business. She would propose taking over the financial management, since she was so much better with numbers. She would slowly, methodically drain the company of every dollar. That she knew about the fake cancer diagnosis that was coming in 3 months, the carefully orchestrated series of doctor's appointments that would lead her down a path of confusion and dependence. She knew about the forged documents that would transfer ownership of her studio to Chloe's new company. She knew about the poison. But this time, she had the blueprint. I spent the next few hours in my study, my laptop open in front of me. I changed every password. I set up a separate bank account, hidden from Mark's view. I contacted a forensic accountant, a quiet, unassuming man who had, in another life, helped me uncover the truth too late. This time, he would be my first line of defense. And then I started my research. Alexander Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Global, a real estate and hospitality conglomerate that was about to break ground on its biggest project. The Madison Hotel, a flagship property that would define the city's skyline for decades. In my other life, I had been too distracted, too broken, to pursue his contract. Chloe had intercepted his interest, claiming I was too sick to take on new work. She had stolen that contract, too, using it to build her own empire. This time, I was going to get there first. I spent hours crafting the perfect email. Not a desperate, groveling plea. Not a professional, cold pitch. It was a statement. A promise. A vision. I hit send and leaned back in my chair. A new sense of purpose settling over me. The next step was the most painful. But it had to be done. I pulled up my mother's contact information. Patricia Vance. The woman who had always loved my brother more, who had always seen me as a commodity, an asset to be married off to a wealthy man who could enhance the family's standing. She had stood by Mark's side through the divorce, even as I was dying. She had called me a disappointment for failing to keep my husband happy. I stared at her name on the screen for a long time. The rage in my chest flared, hot and bright. But it was tempered with something else. A cold, Calculating clarity that I typed out a short message. Me. Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About being a better wife. I want to fix things with Mark. He wants to take us out for a nice dinner this weekend. Just the four of us. I think it would mean the world to him if you and Dad could come. Let's make this right. I hit send. That it was a lie. Every word of it. There would be no reconciliation. There would be no happy family dinner. What there would be was a trap. I was baiting them, drawing them into a carefully orchestrated performance. I was going to give them exactly what they wanted, and then I was going to take it all away. Patricia's reply came almost instantly. Patricia. That's the most sensible thing you've said in months, Eleanor. We'll be there. Make sure you're on your best behavior. And wear something flattering, for heaven's sake. I laughed. An actual, mirthless laugh that echoed through the silent room, that I looked out the window at the golden afternoon sun. The city sprawled before me, a concrete jungle of opportunity and danger. For years ago, I had walked into that jungle with my eyes closed, trusting everyone I met, believing in fairy tales and happily ever afters. This time, I was going to walk in with my eyes wide open. And I was going to burn it all down. The doorbell rang again. I knew that frantic, impatient rhythm. It was Chloe, arriving early for our coffee date, unable to contain her excitement to begin her manipulation. I looked at my reflection in the dark screen of my laptop. The woman who stared back was still crying, but her eyes were on fire. Let the games begin. I whispered to the ghost of the old me, and may the best woman win. I walked to the door, my steps slow and deliberate, savoring the final moments of peace. I opened it to find Chloe beaming at me, her arms spread wide for a hug. Elle. Oh my God, I missed you. You look exhausted. We have so much to talk about. I smiled back at her. A sweet, trusting smile. The same smile I had worn for the last 5 years of our friendship. Chloe, I said, stepping into her embrace and feeling the subtle tension in her body, the barely concealed greed in her eyes. It's so good to see you. In my other life, this hug was the last time I had hugged her without knowing the truth. In this life, it was the first hug of my new beginning. I held her close, feeling the warmth of her body, the soft scent of her expensive perfume. And I whispered in her ear, so softly she couldn't possibly hear the truth behind the words. I'm going to destroy you. She pulled back, her smile bright and innocent. What did you say? I smiled. I said I'm so glad to have you in my life. Her smile widened, and she grabbed my hand, dragging me toward the door. Come on, Bestie. Let's go make some plans. Our future is going to be amazing. I let myself be dragged, a lamb being led to the slaughter. But this time, I was the one holding the knife. And I couldn't wait to show them all exactly what I was capable of. The sun was setting, casting long, blood-red shadows across the city. Eleanor Vance walked into the golden light, a woman reborn from the ashes of her own death. Behind her, the house stood silent, a monument to the lies and the betrayal that had almost destroyed her. But she didn't look back. She had already left that life behind. She had a new life to build, an empire to create, and a long, long list of people who needed to pay. The first name on that list was walking beside her, chattering excitedly about the future. Chloe had no idea what was coming. None of them did. But they were about to find out that the cafe on Fifth Avenue was the kind of place Chloe loved. All exposed brick and hanging ivy, with mismatched vintage chairs and a chalkboard menu that changed daily. It was pretentious and overpriced, the perfect backdrop for Chloe's carefully curated persona of the effortlessly chic creative entrepreneur. She had chosen it, of course. She always chose the venues for our bestie dates. Always positioned herself at the center of the aesthetic. Always made sure the lighting was flattering for the inevitable Instagram story. I watched her settle into her seat, crossing her legs with practiced elegance, tossing her chestnut hair over her shoulder. She was beautiful, I had always thought, in a sharp, polished way that made me feel dull and frumpy by comparison. She had a way of making everything look easy, of gliding through life while I stumbled and tripped. That was the trick, I now understood. She had spent years building herself up by tearing me down, slowly and subtly, until I was so insecure that I would hand her everything just for a crumb of validation. Elle, you look pale, she said, her brow furrowing with manufactured concern. Have you been eating? You know stress is terrible for your skin. I've told you 1,000 times, you need to delegate. You need to let people help you. I stirred my latte, watching the foam swirl into patterns. I've been thinking about that, actually. About delegating. Maybe you're right. Her eyes lit up. It was a small thing, a flicker of greed so fast most people would have missed it. But I had seen that flicker before. I had seen it on her face as she slid that document across my hospital bed. The document that transferred ownership of my studio to a shell company she controlled. I had seen it as she watched me sign, my hand trembling and weak, telling me it was just a temporary measure, to protect my assets while I recovered. Of course I'm right, she said, leaning forward. That's what I'm here for, Bestie. To look out for you. You know I've always had your back. Always. Such a small word for such a monumental lie. The thing is, I said slowly, choosing my words with the precision of a surgeon. I've been getting a lot of interest in the studio lately. Big clients. The kind of clients that could really put us on the map. But I'm struggling to manage it all on my own. The administrative stuff, the finances, the client follow-ups. It's all becoming overwhelming. Chloe reached across the table and took my hand. Her skin was warm and smooth, her grip firm and reassuring. A friend's grip. A partner's grip. Then let me help you. You know I'm great with that stuff. I can take over the finances. The bookkeeping, the invoicing, all the boring numbers stuff. You focus on the creative side, and I'll handle the rest. She said it so smoothly, so naturally. Like it was the most obvious solution in the world. And in my past life, I had fallen for it. I had smiled gratefully and handed her the keys to the castle, not realizing she was already planning to sell every piece of furniture. That's so generous of you, Chloe, I said, letting my voice tremble with just the right amount of vulnerability. But I don't want to burden you. You have your own projects now. She waved her hand dismissively. My projects are nothing compared to yours. Honestly, Elle, I've been thinking about it a lot. We should just merge our efforts. Pool our resources. One big, badass creative agency with both of our names on the door. Ah, there it was. The opening move. In my other life, the merger had been the first step in the dismantling of my company. She had brought in a team of lawyers and accountants who had slowly, methodically, stripped me of my ownership until I was nothing more than a figurehead. A puppet. And when I had finally protested, when I had finally tried to fight back, I was already too sick, too weak, too broken to do anything but watch. That sounds amazing, I said, my voice bright with false enthusiasm. But let's not rush into anything. I need to get my ducks in a row first. I have a meeting on Monday with a potential client. A big one. Let me see how that goes, and then we can talk about the future. Her smile faltered just for a second. She wasn't used to me putting up barriers. She wasn't used to me saying, let's wait. But she recovered quickly, her smile returning brighter than ever. Of course. Whatever you need. I'm here for you always. Just say the word. I smiled back at her, and I let her see the gratitude in my eyes, the desperation, the dependence. I let her believe she was still in control. We spent the next hour talking about nothing, the surface-level chatter of two women who were supposed to be best friends. She told me about her new apartment, the one Mark had helped her find, though she didn't mention his name. She told me about her exciting new venture, a boutique marketing firm she was planning to launch, though she framed it as a side project to keep her busy. She told me about all the ways she was going to help me build my empire, all the while sharpening the knife she was planning to plunge into my back. And I nodded and smiled, and I let her talk, because every word she spoke was a piece of evidence. Every lie, every manipulation, every subtle jab at my confidence was another log on the fire I was building in my chest when we finally parted ways. She hugged me tightly, pressing her cheek against mine. I love you, Elle. You know that, right? I love you too, Chloe, I said, and I meant it. I loved the idea of her. I loved the friendship I had thought we had. But that girl, that naive and trusting girl, was dead. The woman who hugged her back was a stranger, wearing the skin of the woman Chloe had killed, ready to repay every single betrayal 1,000 times over. I watched her walk away, her heels clicking on the pavement, her perfect posture a testament to her absolute confidence. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. She thought I was still the same gullible fool she had always known. She was wrong. The rest of the day was a blur of motion. I had so much to do, so much to prepare. The clock was ticking, and I had only a small window of opportunity before Mark and Chloe's plans began to unfold in earnest. I went to my studio, a bright, open space in the heart of the design district. It had been my sanctuary once, my pride and joy. Now it felt like a tomb, a monument to all the dreams I had buried there. The walls were covered with sketches, mood boards, photographs of projects I had poured my heart into. The awards on the shelf gleamed in the afternoon light, each one a reminder of a woman who had been too busy achieving to notice the knives being sharpened around her. I sat at my desk and pulled up my client list. It was extensive, a who's who of local businesses and up-and-coming brands. Chloe had her eyes on all of them. I remembered how, in my other life, she had systematically reached out to each and every one, slowly seducing them away with promises of better service, better prices, better everything. She had used my illness as a weapon, telling them I was too sick to work, too unreliable to trust. And they had believed her, because who wouldn't trust the sweet, devoted best friend? This time I was ready for her. I drafted a careful email to my top 10 clients. It was short, professional, and slightly cryptic. It warned them of unusual inquiries from a recently established firm that was attempting to poach talent from my team. It asked them to be cautious, to verify any unexpected communications, and to reach out to me directly if they had any concerns. It was a preemptive strike, a quiet warning that would make them suspicious of any approach Chloe might make. Then I turned to my finances. The forensic accountant I had contacted had sent me a preliminary report. It was damning. There were already discrepancies in my books, small ones barely noticeable. A few $1,000s here, a few thousand there. In my other life, these discrepancies had grown over time, becoming a flood that had drowned my business. Now I knew exactly who was responsible. Chloe had been skimming from me for years, long before the betrayal had become overt. She had been building her new empire on my foundations. I called my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Janet who had been my college roommate's sister. In my other life, I had been too afraid to involve her, too ashamed to admit what was happening. This time, I gave her everything. The bank statements, the emails, the timeline of events I had compiled. I told her about the suspicious investment opportunities Mark had been pushing, the health supplements Chloe had been giving me, the subtle but growing pattern of isolation and control. This is serious, Eleanor, Janet said, her voice grave. If what you're telling me is true, this goes beyond financial fraud. This is criminal. This is. I don't even want to say the word until we have more evidence. Say it, I said, my voice cold and steady. They're trying to kill me, Janet. They tried to kill me, and they're going to try again. I need you to help me stop them. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, the rustle of papers, the distant hum of city traffic. And then slowly, deliberately, she said, "Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out. I'll need documentation for all of it. And Eleanor, be careful. These people are dangerous. If they realize you're onto them." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm not going to let them." I hung up and leaned back in my chair, my body humming with tension. The pieces were falling into place. Slowly, carefully, I was building a fortress around myself brick by brick. And when the siege came, when Mark and Chloe finally launched their attack, I would be ready that the sun had set by the time I left the studio. The city was a sea of lights, glittering and alive. I walked through the streets, my heels clicking on the pavement, and I felt a strange sense of peace. It was the peace of a woman who had finally stopped running, who had finally turned to face her enemies with a sword in her hand. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A Sterling. * Ms. Vance. I read your proposal. It's bold, unconventional. It reminds me of something I would have designed myself 20 years ago. I'm intrigued. My assistant will be in touch to schedule a meeting. Monday 9 a.m. Don't be late. * I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, my heart hammering in my chest. Alexander Sterling, the titan of the industry, the man who had the power to make or break careers with a single word. He had responded. He was interested. The first domino had fallen. I typed back a reply, my fingers steady despite the tremor in my soul. Vance. Asterisk, I wouldn't dream of it, Mr. Sterling. I'll bring my best ideas and my sharpest pencil. See you on Monday. Asterisk, I pocketed my phone and continued walking, my steps lighter now, my heart soaring. I had the meeting. I had the plan. I had the fire in my belly and the cold, clear vision in my mind. Everything was falling into place, but as I turned the corner to my street, I saw something that made me stop cold. Parked in front of my house was a sleek black sedan. I recognized it instantly. It was the car Mark had bought for his business trips. The car he had used to shuttle Chloe to and from their secret apartment. The car he had driven to the hospital on the night I died. The night he had stood over my bed and smiled as my life slipped away. The engine was running, the windows tinted dark. I couldn't see who was inside, but I didn't need to. I knew he was waiting for me. I stood there for a long moment, my heart pounding, my fists clenched at my sides. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to get away before he could get his hands on me again. But I didn't move. I couldn't, because the old Eleanor had run. The old Eleanor had hidden. And look where it had gotten her. The driver's door opened, and Mark stepped out. He was wearing a different sweater now. A dark gray one that made his eyes look almost black. He was smiling, that same charming, disarming smile I had fallen in love with so many years ago. Eleanor, he called out, his voice warm and welcoming. I was just driving by and saw your lights on. Thought I'd stop in and see how you were doing. I watched him approach, my eyes cataloging every detail. The slight tension in his jaw. The way his hands were shoved in his pockets, hiding something. The flicker of impatience in his eyes, barely concealed beneath the mask of affection. I'm fine, Mark, I said, my voice calm and steady. Just heading home. He fell into step beside me, matching my pace. Good. I was thinking we should have dinner tonight. Just you and me. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize I've been neglecting you. This new business venture has been taking up all my time, and that's not fair to you. I almost laughed. This new business venture. This secret company he was building with my money and my best friend, all while pretending to be the devoted husband. I'm pretty tired, Mark, I said, fumbling with my keys. Maybe some other time. He reached out and placed a hand on my arm, his grip firm but not painful. Come on, babe. I really want to talk to you. There's something important I need to tell you. There was something in his voice that made my blood run cold. A note of finality. A warning. In my other life, this was the night he had told me he was leaving. The night he had packed his bags and walked out the door, leaving me alone and broken. But this time, I knew what was coming. I knew the words he was about to say, the lies he was about to spin. And I was ready. I turned to face him, my eyes meeting his. Okay, Mark. Let's talk. But not here. Inside. I unlocked the door and stepped into the house, leaving it open behind me. I could feel his presence at my back, the weight of his gaze, the promise of betrayal in every step. As I walked into the living room, my heart pounding, my mind racing, I knew one thing for certain. Tonight, the game would change. Tonight, Mark would show his hand and I would be there, waiting, ready to play my own. I turned to face him, a smile on my lips and steel in my soul. So Mark, what's so important that you couldn't wait until morning? He smiled back at me, and I saw the hunter in his eyes. But I was no longer the prey. The living room felt smaller with Mark in it. That was the first thing I noticed. He had a way of filling a space, of making everything around him seem diminished, including me. For years I had mistaken that for strength, for charisma. Now I recognized it for what it was. A parasite's talent for draining the life from its host. He settled onto the couch, the same couch we had picked out together on a rainy Saturday afternoon, back when I still believed in us. He made himself comfortable, sprawling across the cushions like a king surveying his domain. I remained standing, my arms crossed over my chest, a deliberate distance between us. So, he said, patting the cushion beside him. Come sit. We need to talk. I'm fine standing, I replied, my voice cool. What's on your mind? He studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing slightly. He wasn't used to this version of me. The old Eleanor would have rushed to his side, would have perched nervously on the edge of the cushion, desperate to please, desperate to fix whatever was wrong. This new Eleanor was an enigma to him, and he didn't like enigmas. Okay, he said slowly, sitting up straighter. I'll just say it. I've been offered a partnership. A major one. An investment firm in the city wants to bring me on board as a managing partner. It's the opportunity of a lifetime, but it requires a significant capital contribution. We'd need to liquidate some assets. The house, the studio, your trust fund. My blood ran cold, but I kept my face impassive. In my other life, this was the beginning of the end. He had framed it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a chance for us to build a future together. And I had believed him. I had signed over everything, convinced that I was supporting my husband, my partner, my love. It had taken me years to realize that the investment firm was actually Chloe's shell company, and that the capital contribution was nothing more than a theft. That's quite an opportunity, I said, my voice flat. How much of a contribution are we talking about? He named a figure, and I had to suppress a bitter laugh. It was almost exactly the total of my trust fund, my savings, and the equity in my studio. They had done their homework. They knew exactly how much I was worth, and they had planned to take every single penny. And what do I get out of this? I asked, tilting my head slightly. He blinked, caught off guard by the question. What do you get? You get a husband who's a managing partner at a major firm. You get financial security. You get to be a kept woman, finally. Isn't that what you've always wanted? Kept. The word was like a slap. He had always known exactly which buttons to push, exactly which insecurities to exploit. And I had let him. I had been so desperate to be loved, so desperate to be enough, that I had swallowed every single one of his carefully crafted lies. I'm going to need to think about it, I said, my voice calm and measured. That's a significant amount of money, Mark. I can't just make a decision like that on the spot. His jaw tightened. He wasn't used to resistance. This is time sensitive. I need to give them an answer by the end of the week. You can't just think about it. This is our future we're talking about. Our future, I repeated, letting a hint of bitter amusement creep into my voice. Or your future. He stood up abruptly, his composure cracking. What the hell is that supposed to mean? I'm doing this for us. Everything I do is for us. I'm trying to build a life for you, for us. And you're just going to sit there and question my motives? I watched him, my heart pounding, my hand steady. The mask was slipping. The charming, devoted husband was fading. And the real Mark was emerging. The man who had stood over my hospital bed and smiled as I died. The man who had planned my murder in cold blood. I'm just being practical, I said softly. We've been through a lot lately. I need to make sure this is the right move for us. For both of us. He stared at me, his eyes blazing with barely contained fury. For a moment, I thought he was going to snap, to drop the act entirely and show me the monster I knew was lurking beneath the surface. But he was too smart for that. He took a deep breath, ran a hand through his hair, and forced a smile back onto his face. Fine, he said, his voice strained. Take your time. But don't take too long. This opportunity won't wait forever. He walked toward the door, his shoulders rigid, his footsteps heavy. At the threshold, he paused and turned back to look at me. You know, Elle, I sometimes wonder if you even appreciate everything I've done for you. Everything I've sacrificed. If you ever truly trusted me at all. The words were designed to wound, to twist the knife just a little deeper. And in my other life they had worked. I had spent countless sleepless nights wondering what I had done wrong. How I had failed him. Why I wasn't enough. But I knew the truth now. I had never failed him. He had failed me. He had betrayed me, lied to me, and planned to destroy me. I trust you completely, Mark, I said, my voice sweet and sincere. That's why I need to be sure. Because I believe in us. He nodded, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. He didn't understand this new version of me. He didn't know how to handle a woman who agreed with him while standing her ground, who smiled while holding the door closed on his ambitions. That he left, the door clicking shut behind him. I stood in the living room, my legs trembling, my heart racing. I had done it. I had faced him down and held my ground. But the victory felt hollow, tainted by the knowledge of what was still to come. I sank onto the couch, my head in my hands, and let myself feel the weight of everything. The betrayal, the grief, the rage. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotion that threatened to sweep me away. But I didn't let it. I couldn't. I had work to do. My phone buzzed, a welcome distraction. It was a text from Janet, my lawyer. Janet. I've reviewed the documents you sent. The discrepancies in your accounts are significant. We have enough to freeze all of Chloe's access. Do you want to proceed? I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. This was the moment of no return. If I froze Chloe's access now, she would know that I was onto her. The game would change. They would become more desperate, more dangerous. They might even accelerate their timeline. But if I waited, if I let them continue to drain my accounts, I would be giving them the ammunition to destroy me. It was a risk either way. The only question was which path gave me the best chance of survival. I typed my reply. Me. Not yet. Let her dig her own grave. I want to see exactly how deep she's willing to go. I put the phone down and leaned back, closing my eyes. The house was silent, but my mind was a storm. I could see them both so clearly. Mark, his face twisted with greed as he plotted his next move. Chloe, her smile bright and empty as she sharpened her knives. They were circling me, waiting for the right moment to strike. But they didn't know that the woman they were circling was no longer the same prey. They didn't know that I had seen the future, that I had died in their web and come back with the knowledge of every single thread. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in years. I dressed carefully, choosing a power suit that made me feel invincible. It was black, sharp, and impeccably tailored, the kind of armor that declared to the world that I was not to be underestimated. The meeting with Alexander Sterling was in 2 hours. My entire future hinged on this one encounter. I needed to be perfect. I arrived at the Sterling Global Tower 20 minutes early, my portfolio clutched in my hands, my heart pounding in my chest. The building was a monument to wealth and power, all glass and steel and soaring ambition. I stepped into the marble lobby and felt the weight of 1,000 eyes upon me. I was just another woman in a suit, another hopeful trying to climb the ladder. But I was determined to be the one who reached the top. The elevator ride to the 45th floor was silent and smooth. I emerged into a world of sleek, minimalist elegance. The reception desk was a curved block of white marble, and the woman behind it looked up at me with a practiced smile. Eleanor Vance to see Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice steady. She nodded and gestured toward a door. He's expecting you. Right this way. I walked through the door and into a conference room that took my breath away. The entire wall was a window, revealing a panoramic view of the city skyline. The table was a slab of polished wood, surrounded by expensive leather chairs. And at the head of the table, Alexander Sterling sat. A man who commanded the room without saying a word. He was older than I had expected, with silver-streaked hair, and the kind of tired eyes that spoke of a lifetime of sleepless nights and difficult decisions. But there was a sharpness in those eyes, a keen intelligence that missed nothing. Ms. Vance, he said, rising to his feet. Thank you for coming. Please sit. I took the chair across from him, my hand steady despite the nervous flutter in my chest. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze probing, assessing. I held his gaze, refusing to look away. I had faced death itself. I was not going to be intimidated by a businessman, no matter how powerful. Your proposal was unusual, he said finally. You have a distinct vision, I'll give you that. But vision is cheap. Execution is everything. Why should I trust you with my flagship project? I leaned forward, my eyes blazing with conviction. Because I'm the only person in this city who understands that the Madison isn't just a hotel. It's a statement. A symbol. A legacy. Anyone can build a beautiful building. But I can build a brand. I can make people feel something when they walk through those doors. I can make them remember. He smiled, a slow, genuine smile that softened the hard lines of his face. You have fire, Ms. Vance. I like that. It's a rare quality in this business. He stood up and walked to the window, his back to me. I'm going to give you a chance. A trial. I want a full proposal on my desk by the end of the week. If it's everything you say it is, you'll have my support. If it's not. He turned to face me, his eyes cold. If it's not, I'll never work with you again. And I'll make sure no one else does either. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. This was a man who built empires and destroyed careers with equal ease. I had seen what happened to people who disappointed him. I had no intention of becoming one of them. Thank you, Mr. Sterling, I said, rising to my feet. You won't regret this. He nodded and walked me to the door. As I reached for the handle, he placed a hand on my arm, stopping me. One more thing, Ms. Vance. I did some digging on you. Your husband, Mark. His business dealings are interesting. And your former partner, Chloe. I've heard rumors that she's been approaching some of my other potential designers. Nothing overt, nothing concrete. But I don't like snakes in my garden. I met his eyes, my heart pounding. Neither do I, Mr. Sterling. Neither do I. He smiled again, a cold, predatory smile that told me more about him than any words could. I thought you might say that. Good luck, Ms. Vance. I suspect you're going to need it. I left the building in a daze, my mind spinning with possibilities. Alexander Sterling was an ally, but he was also a test. A gatekeeper. A judge. I had passed the first round, but the real battle was just beginning. As I walked down the street, my phone buzzed. A text from Chloe.
Chloé, astérisque L.
I heard from Mark that you're thinking about some big changes. Let's talk tonight. I have an idea that's going to blow your mind. Asterisk bomb. I stared at the screen, a cold smile spreading across my face. She had no idea what was coming. None of them did. I typed my reply. Me. Asterisk. I can't wait, Chloe. I have some ideas of my own. Asterisk. I pocketed my phone and walked into the sunlight, a woman reborn from the ashes of her own destruction. The hunt was on, and this time I was the one holding the bow. The prey had become the predator. And the wolves were about to learn the hard way that the lamb had teeth. Chloe's apartment was everything I had ever wanted and could never have. It was a penthouse in the newest luxury building downtown. All floor-to-ceiling windows and Italian marble and curated art pieces that probably cost more than my entire studio. The irony was not lost on me. She had built this life on the foundation of my trust, my money, my stolen dreams. Every sleek surface, every designer chair, every carefully arranged flower on the coffee table was a monument to her betrayal. I stood in the doorway, taking it all in, the weight of it pressing down on my chest. The old Eleanor would have felt inadequate here, small and plain in the face of Chloe's effortless glamour. The new Eleanor felt something else entirely. A cold, simmering fury that was almost intoxicating. Elle. You made it. Chloe swept across the room, her arms open wide, her smile as bright and hollow as a billboard. She was wearing a silk kaftan that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her hair perfectly tousled, her makeup flawless. It was a performance, a calculated display of success and happiness designed to make me feel like a failure by comparison. Thanks for having me, I said, stepping into her embrace and forcing myself to return the hug. Her body was warm and soft, her perfume cloying and sweet. I breathed it in and remembered the taste of arsenic on my tongue. Of course, Bestie. She pulled back and gestured toward the living room. Come sit. I made us some tea. That special blend you like, the one with the herbs for relaxation. I know you've been so stressed lately. My blood turned to ice. The special blend. The herbs. The tea she had brought me every evening. The tea that had slowly, methodically poisoned me. I looked at the steaming cups on the coffee table, the delicate porcelain, the faint curl of steam rising from the amber liquid. In my other life, I had drunk it gratefully, believing it was a gesture of love. Now I knew it was a death sentence. Thank you, I said, my voice carefully neutral. You're always so thoughtful. She beamed and settled onto the couch, tucking her legs beneath her like a cat curling up in a sunbeam. So Mark told me you're thinking about that investment opportunity. The partnership. He said you were hesitant. I sat down across from her, positioning myself so I could see both her and the door. Every instinct screamed at me to be on guard, to watch for the knife that was undoubtedly coming. I'm just being cautious, I said, picking up my teacup but not drinking from it. It's a lot of money, Chloe. I need to make sure it's the right move. She leaned forward, her eyes wide and earnest. Elle, I get it. I really do. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Mark is brilliant, and this partnership could set you both up for life. You could quit the studio. You could travel the world. You could finally have the life you've always dreamed of. The life I had always dreamed of. That was rich, coming from her. She knew exactly what I had dreamed of: a loving husband, a successful career, a family. And she had systematically dismantled every single one of those dreams, piece by piece, all while smiling in my face. "I've been thinking about that," I said slowly, swirling the tea in my cup. "About the studio. About the future. You know, I actually have a meeting next week with a potential new client. A big one. The Madison Hotel project." Her eyes flickered. It was a tiny thing, barely perceptible, but I caught it. The greedy, calculating glint of a woman who saw an opportunity to steal something new. "The Madison, that's Alexander Sterling's project, isn't it? I've heard it's massive." "But honey, are you sure you're up for that? You've been so tired lately, so stressed. Maybe you should let someone else take the lead on that one. Focus on taking care of yourself." And there it was. The classic Chloe maneuver. Plant the seed of doubt, undermine my confidence, and then swoop in to help by taking over. In my other life, I had fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. I had handed her the project, convinced that I was too weak to handle it, and she had taken it and run, building her own reputation on the foundation of my work. "I think I can manage," I said, my voice cool. "It's a challenge, sure. But I've been working on a proposal, and I think it's really strong. I actually met with Mr. Sterling this morning." The mask slipped. Just for a second. Chloe's smile faltered, her eyes widening with shock and barely concealed fury. She recovered quickly, but it was too late. I had seen it. I had seen the real Chloe, the woman who had been planning to steal my future. "You met with him." Her voice was higher than usual, a tell she couldn't control. "When? Why didn't you tell me?" "It was last minute," I said, shrugging casually. "He reached out to me, actually. He was intrigued by my portfolio. We had a great conversation. He's considering giving me the project." Chloe's hands tightened around her teacup, her knuckles white. She was trying to smile, trying to look happy for me, but the effort was cracking her composure. That's amazing, Al. I'm so proud of you. But honey, you have to be careful. Alexander Sterling is a shark. He'll eat you alive if you're not ready for him. Maybe I should come with you to the next meeting. You know, for moral support. And I can help you negotiate." No, you can't. You can't come because you'll poison the well. You'll undermine me at every turn. And then you'll take the project for yourself. Just like you took everything else. "That's really sweet of you, Chloe," I said, smiling warmly. "But I think I need to handle this one on my own. You're right, I've been leaning on you too much. It's time I stood on my own 2 feet." She stared at me, her smile frozen in place, her eyes flickering with confusion and frustration. This wasn't going the way she had planned. I could see the gears turning in her head, the frantic recalculation of her strategy. She had expected me to be weak and vulnerable, desperate for her help. Instead, I was strong, confident, and strangely self-sufficient. "Well," she said finally, forcing a bright, brittle laugh. "Of course. You do whatever you need to do, Bestie. I'm here for you always." We talked for another hour, the conversation drifting aimlessly through surface-level topics. She told me about her new venture, a small PR firm she was launching with a few select clients. She didn't mention Mark. She didn't mention the money she had siphoned from my accounts. She didn't mention the T. And I sat there, nodding and smiling, watching her lie to me with the ease of a woman who had been practicing for years. By the time I left, the sun had set, and the city lights were glittering like 1,000 diamonds. I walked through the streets, my heels clicking on the pavement, my mind racing. Chloe was rattled. She knew something was different. She knew I wasn't the same gullible fool she had so easily manipulated. But she didn't know how different I had become. She didn't know that I had come back from the dead with a score to settle. That my phone buzzed as I reached my front door. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Unknown. * Ms. Vance, I have information that may be of interest to you. It concerns your husband and his business partner. I can provide proof of their fraudulent activities. Meet me tomorrow at 7 a.m. The coffee shop on 8th and Main. Come alone. Tell no one. * I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. This was unexpected. A mystery informant, reaching out with evidence against Mark and Chloe. It could be a trap, a setup designed to lure me into a vulnerable position. But it could also be the breakthrough I needed, the key to unlocking the case against them. I typed a reply.me. I'll be there. How will I recognize you? Unknown. I'll recognize you. Don't be late. I pocketed my phone and walked into my house, the weight of the day pressing down on my shoulders. So much had happened in such a short time. The meeting with Sterling, the confrontation with Mark, the careful dance with Chloe, and now this mysterious message. It was a lot to process that I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the living room, staring out at the dark city beyond my window. My mind was a battlefield, a chaotic swirl of plans and contingencies and fears. Every move I made had to be calculated. Every word I spoke had to be precise. There was no room for error, no space for mistakes. And yet, even in the midst of the chaos, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. A fragile, flickering flame that refused to be extinguished, that I had been given a second chance. A gift I didn't deserve. And I was determined to make it count. At the next morning, I woke before dawn and dressed in comfortable clothes, the kind that didn't scream, "I'm a woman on a mission." I wanted to be invisible, forgettable, a ghost moving through the city. The coffee shop on 8th and Main was a small, unassuming place, the kind of hole in the wall that tourists never found. I ordered a black coffee and sat in the corner, my back to the wall, watching the door. At exactly 7 a.m., a woman walked in. She was nondescript, average height and build, with mousy brown hair and a face that seemed designed to be forgotten. She wore a plain gray coat and carried a messenger bag slung across her body. She spotted me immediately and walked over to my table, sliding into the seat across from me without a word. "Ms. Vance," she said, her voice low and flat. "Thank you for coming." "You're the one who texted me," I said, studying her face. She was younger than I had expected, maybe late 20s, with tired eyes and a nervous twitch in her left hand. "What do you want?" She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick manila folder, sliding it across the table toward me. "I used to work for Solstice Creative, Chloe's company. I was her assistant. I saw things, Ms. Vance. Things I wasn't supposed to see." I opened the folder, my eyes scanning the pages. Bank statements, emails, receipts, evidence of embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy. It was all there, meticulously documented, ready to be used as a weapon. "Chloe fired me 6 months ago," the woman continued, her voice trembling slightly. I was getting too close to the truth. She made sure I couldn't find another job in the industry. She destroyed my reputation. I have nothing left. I looked up from the folder, my heart pounding. "Why are you giving this to me?" The woman met my eyes, and I saw something in them that I recognized. Rage, grief, a burning desire for justice. "Because you're the only one who can stop her. And I want to help. I want to watch her burn." I nodded slowly, a cold smile spreading across my face. "You and me both. Tell me everything. And I mean everything." We talked for an hour, the woman's story spilling out in a torrent of facts and accusations. She had been there from the beginning, had watched Chloe and Mark build their empire on the bones of my business. She knew about the shell companies, the forged documents, the secret accounts. She knew about the tea. By the time she left, I had a case. A real, solid, evidence-backed case that would bring them both to their knees. I sat in the coffee shop, staring at the folder in my hands, a feeling of grim satisfaction settling over me. The trap was set. The pieces were in place. All I had to do was spring it. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "Mark. *L. We need to talk. It's urgent. Can you meet me for lunch, the usual place? 1 p.m. I smiled, a predator's smile, and typed my reply.me. "I'll be there." The hunt was almost over. And when it was done, there would be nothing left of Mark and Chloe but ashes. I walked out of the coffee shop into the cold morning sun. The folder clutched against my chest like a shield. The battle was coming. And I was ready. The lamb had become a wolf. And the wolves were about to learn what it felt like to be prey. The restaurant Mark had chosen was the same one where he had proposed to me. A lifetime ago. It had seemed romantic and intimate. A hidden gem in the heart of the city where the lighting was soft and the wine was expensive. Now it felt like a mausoleum. A monument to a marriage that had been alive from the very first moment. I arrived early, deliberately so, and took a seat at a table near the back. I wanted to watch him walk in. I wanted to see his face, the flicker of calculation behind his practiced smile, the subtle tension in his shoulders as he prepared to deliver his latest performance. I needed to see the man I had once loved with the eyes of the woman he had tried to kill. He walked in at exactly 1 o'clock, his stride confident, his smile firmly in place. He was wearing a tailored navy suit, the one I had bought him for our 5th anniversary, and he looked every inch the successful businessman. But I knew the truth behind the facade. I knew the desperation lurking beneath the surface, the panic that was slowly consuming him. Chloe had been calling him all morning, frantic, demanding to know why I wasn't falling into line. Their carefully constructed house of cards was starting to crumble, and they could feel the wind picking up. "Elle," he said, sliding into the seat across from me and reaching for my hand. I let him take it, let him feel the cold stillness of my skin, the absence of the desperate warmth that had once greeted his every touch. "Thank you for coming. I know things have been difficult lately, but I want to fix this. I want to fix us." I pulled my hand back and picked up my water glass, taking a slow, deliberate sip. "Fix us, Mark, that's a big word. What exactly needs fixing?" He leaned forward, his eyes wide with manufactured sincerity. "Everything. I've been a terrible husband. I've been distant, distracted. I've let my work consume me. But I'm ready to change. I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I realize I can't lose you. You're the most important thing in my life." The words were beautiful. They were the words I had longed to hear for years. The words I had craved with every fiber of my being. In my other life, I would have wept with joy. I would have thrown my arms around him and promised to do better, to be better, to give him everything he needed, but the woman sitting across from him had heard those words before. She had heard them the night he had come home late, smelling of Chloe's perfume, and spun a story about a business meeting that ran too long. She had heard them the morning he had closed the joint account, claiming it was for tax purposes. She had heard them the last time she had opened her eyes, just before the darkness claimed her, and he had whispered, "You can let go now." "Chloe told me about the Madison Hotel project," he continued, his voice smooth and persuasive. "She said you met with Alexander Sterling. That's amazing, Elle. But you need to be careful. Sterling is a ruthless man. He'll take everything you've got and leave you with nothing. Chloe and I have been talking, and we think you should let us handle the negotiations. We have experience with these types of deals." And there it was, the opening move. He was trying to control me, to insert himself and Chloe into the most important opportunity of my career. If I let them, they would sabotage me, destroy my credibility, and then swoop in to claim the prize for themselves. "Actually," I said, my voice calm and measured, "I've already signed the contract. Mr. Sterling and I came to an agreement yesterday. The Madison project is mine. All of it." The mask shattered. Mark's eyes widened, his jaw dropping slightly. He recovered quickly, but I had seen the flash of pure, unadulterated fury. "You what, without consulting me, without even talking to Chloe L. That's incredibly reckless. You had no right to make that decision on your own." "No right," I repeated, letting the words hang in the air. "No right. Mark, it's my business. My career. My life. You don't get to make decisions for me anymore." He stared at me, his face a kaleidoscope of emotions. Anger, confusion, and something that looked almost like fear. "What's happened to you? You used to trust me. You used to listen to me. You're not the same woman I married." "No," I said softly. "I'm not. And you're the one who made me this way." I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila folder, the one I had received from Chloe's former assistant. I slid it across the table toward him, watching his face as he realized what it was. His complexion paled, his hands trembling as he opened the folder and began to read. Where did you get this?" he stammered, his voice cracking. "I have my sources," I said. "The same sources you and Chloe tried to destroy. The same people you stepped on to build your empire. They're very eager to testify." He slammed the folder shut, his eyes blazing with desperation. "Elle, listen to me. This isn't what it looks like. I can explain everything. Just give me a chance." "I've given you too many chances already, Mark. You've had years to explain. Years to come clean. But you didn't. You just kept lying, kept stealing, kept planning to destroy me. His face contorted, the mask finally crumbling to reveal the monster beneath. You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you can just waltz in here and destroy everything I've built? I've sacrificed everything for this. Everything. You don't get to take it away from me. Sacrificed? I laughed, a cold, bitter sound. You sacrificed nothing. You stole everything. My money, my business, my trust. And you were going to steal my life. Don't think I don't know about the tea, Mark. Don't think I don't know about the arsenic. The blood drained from his face. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. In a way, I supposed he had. The woman sitting across from him was supposed to be dead. She was supposed to have died quietly and conveniently, leaving him with a life insurance payout and a clear path to his new life with Chloe. You're insane, he whispered. You're completely insane. Am I? I reached into my bag again and pulled out a second folder. This one thicker and heavier. This one contains everything. The bank statements, the emails, the testimonies from your former employees, and a signed affidavit from Chloe's assistant detailing every single fraudulent transaction. I've already submitted copies to the FBI, the SEC, and the DA's office. They're going to be very interested in your extracurricular activities. He stood up so abruptly that his chair toppled backward, clattering against the floor. You're lying. You're bluffing. You don't have the evidence to prove anything. I don't need to prove anything, I said calmly. The evidence proves itself. I just had to make sure it got to the right people. And it did. The arrests are scheduled for tomorrow morning. You and Chloe are going to prison, Mark. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. He lunged across the table, his hands reaching for my throat. But before he could touch me, 3 men in suits appeared seemingly out of nowhere, grabbing him and restraining him against the table. Mark Vance, one of them said, his voice crisp and official. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. You have the right to remain silent. I watched as they handcuffed him and read him his rights. His face was a mask of disbelief, his eyes wild and desperate. He was still trying to process what was happening, still trying to understand how his carefully crafted plan had fallen apart so completely. This isn't over, he screamed as they dragged him toward the door. You hear me, Eleanor? This isn't over. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy everything you love. I didn't say anything. I just watched him go. My face expressionless, my heart steady. The man I had once loved was gone, replaced by a stranger who had tried to kill me. There was no grief in my heart, only a cold, cleansing relief that I sat in the empty restaurant, my hands clasped around my water glass, and let the silence wash over me. It was over. Mark was gone. Chloe would be arrested within the hour. My family, who had supported him over me, would soon face the consequences of their complicity. I pulled out my phone and called Janet. It's done, I said. They're taking him in now. Execute the rest of the plan. Understood, Janet replied. I'll make sure Chloe is picked up within the hour. And Eleanor, I'm proud of you. You did something remarkable. No, I said softly. I did what I had to do. What I should have done a long time ago. I hung up and sat in the silent restaurant, my mind drifting back to the first day of my new life. The lavender and vanilla candle on the nightstand. The sunlight streaming through the window. The face in the mirror, a stranger's face, burning with cold fire. I had come so far since that morning. I had faced my demons and defeated them. I had rebuilt my life from the ashes of betrayal. And I had emerged stronger, sharper, more powerful than I had ever been. My phone buzzed. A text from Alexander Sterling. Is Sterling. Asterisk, I heard what happened. You handled yourself well. I expect great things from you, Ms. Vance. Don't disappoint me. Asterisk, I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. The future was bright, full of possibility. I had a career to build, an empire to create, a life to live on my own terms. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and walked out of the restaurant. The afternoon sun was warm on my face, the city bustling with life and energy. I breathed in the air, clean and fresh, and felt a profound sense of peace. The old Eleanor was dead. But she had died so that the new Eleanor could live. And the new Eleanor was going to make every moment count. As I walked down the street, I passed a flower shop. In the window was a single white rose, perfect and pure. I stopped and stared at it, remembering the bouquet Mark had brought me on the first day of my rebirth. He had thought it was a gesture of love. In reality, it was a funeral arrangement, a symbol of the woman he was trying to kill. I walked into the shop and bought the rose. The shopkeeper wrapped it in paper and handed it to me with a smile. "Beautiful, isn't it?" she said. "Beautiful," I agreed. "And strong." I carried the rose with me as I walked home, a symbol of everything I had survived and everything I had become. When I reached my door, I paused and looked at the house. It was the same house I had lived in for years, the same walls that had witnessed my grief and pain. But it looked different now. It looked like a sanctuary, a place of rebirth. I walked inside and placed the rose in a vase on the mantel, next to the wedding photo I had finally taken down. The frame was empty now, a blank space waiting to be filled with something new. My phone buzzed one last time. Unknown. *, you did it. I knew you would. She deserves everything that's coming to her. Thank you for giving me my life back. *, I smiled and typed my reply to me. Thank you for giving me the courage to fight for mine. I put the phone down and looked out the window at the setting sun. The sky was ablaze with color, a symphony of gold and crimson and purple. A new day was coming, and I was ready for it. The lamb was dead. Long live the wolf.